Hi,
Hi,
what's your name?
my name is Buncy Pagely.
Okay, and where and when were you born?
I was born here in Victoria in 1941 at, it was a Catholic hospital. It was called St. Joseph.
Okay, and what generation Canadian are you?
I'm third generation,
Okay,
yes.
okay, very nice. So, what can you share with us regarding your family's immigration story?
Well, it's a long story, but I'm going to make it short. My grandfather first arrived in 1913. He left our grandmother, Armanji, and his son. He had a son in 1912, and he left and came to Canada. And it was about 4 months of travel, and he came with some other men that were quite well known in the community in British Columbia at that time.
Okay, and where in India like they started their journey from? Like, what was their village? What was
My
their parent?
grandfather was from the village Tutkala and near Hasharpur.
Okay,
And so my dad was born there in that area. And so he hadn't come to Canada before, so this was his first trip. And there was about 4 other gentlemen that came on the ship with them. So in those days they came down from Punjab and then they went to Calcutta, and then from there they boarded their journey on the ship. And
via
it
Hong
was a
Kong.
4-month journey. And then they landed in Vancouver. So grandfather came the year before the actual Kamagata Maru, so he got involved over working in the mainland. And then when the shore committee was put together, then he was part of that too. He was on the shore and helping there too. So then he started his community work, but he came over to Victoria. He settled in Victoria and got going. And someday I'd like to really know how did they, with no hardly any money, how did they get going? Because it's amazing what he did. I mean, he was able to settle, and at that point there was just male communities, as you know. So when he got to Victoria, then there was a group of men, and they were living in bunkhouses, and somebody was doing the cooking, and others would work, and in other areas. And but they bonded together. The bonding was just a wonderful type of lifestyle, which we would never realize until you actually saw it. So in 1914, and when the Kamagata Maru, then from then, as I said, he moved over to Victoria, and he started his fuel business, and from that it flourished. And years went on, but he had to, over the years, everybody needed to look at their sons coming out to Canada. So Dad had turned 17, and he was still in the village doing his education, and so what he did was he applied for him to come, and then that left Mum and Dad got married at such a young age. They'd been betrothed at 11, but not married, I should say. They'd been brought together as going to be engaged, and when she was going to turn a certain age, then they were going to get married. So they got married before Dad came to Canada, and Dad was only 17. So Dad came in 1929 when he was 17, so years later, right? And what happened was that Mom and grandmother were still there, so they were looking after.
In the same village as your grandfather was?
Yes, my grandmother's village was at Rajput, and so they were there, and they would go back and forth. So his education was between Tukla and Rajput, where my grandmother's village was. They spent a lot of time in her village because grandfather had already come to Canada. So here's grandfather, he's flourishing in his business and working, but he got involved with the community. That was his biggest thing, whether it was the starting of the Gurdwaras in Vancouver or here in Victoria and the island. So over the years, as he was building his business up, and then he brought his son out, and then he went back to India, and my dad did too. And then years later, 1933, my mom and dad, my grandmother, my manji, and meanwhile there was another son born, my dad's brother, in that period of time when grandfather went back, and then they all boarded the ship, and they came to Victoria. So my mom was expecting my sister, and on November 29th they landed, and my sister was born December the 10th. So she could have been born in the ocean, on the ship, but yeah, she's our first. The first of the third generation.
And what year was that when
1933.
1933.
They landed in the end of November. And that was a long journey for a woman that was expecting, right? And but there was other women on the ship too. So in those days then it was opening to families to be coming, and as I said, there was no females. There were some from the beginning, but not that you could count on your fingers. So So that started our family, and then Dad started working with his dad, I should say, my grandfather, Bapu, and next thing he started getting into the community quite a lot over the years before he went back to India to get his family. And so he worked with the Gurdwaras to get them going, and he had a lot. And the one Sikh temple here in Victoria was the one that both were really involved. But then the ones up island, they were very involved in Mayo and Hillcrest, there was one. And then later the new ones came, like Nanaimo and then Duncan. So you've got a history of us going up for every celebration that happened. So Dad was really into sports, so he liked to put together all the volleyball tournaments and all the races, and that would be done in August 1 for Independence Day. I think I've got the right.
Oh, August 15th.
August 15th.
Yeah.
So that would be up in Hillcrest, which was
okay.
a mill town, but a lot of our people had settled there because the mills were there, right? And there's no Gurdwara there now.
Oh, okay.
And it came to Lake Cauchin. So we'd go up to there, and then later the Lake Cauchin Gurdwara started. But mainly our focuses were on Mayo and Hillcrest. So, and then the focuses went also to the mainland. So the Gurdwaras that are over there now, they were part of that. So there was different celebrations. We have the Gurpurps for all of the Gurus and the different ones. So whichever one. So we had Christmas plus the celebration for Guru Gobind Singh and which other Gurus were in that time. So then Baisakhi was celebrated, another one, another. So we'd all travel. And our only form of traveling, now we're coming into another century, right? Another time, decades and decades later, was the boat that went overnight. And I don't know if anybody's ever Victoria Harbour to downtown Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
It was a whole night journey. So we were bored, and it was such a wonderful journey. And
it used to be a small boat, like a...
No, it's a CPR boat, because we were still using it to go to Seattle, and then it went out of commission. And but it was wonderful with our Toronto and Lortia and everything, and all the community that was going for that. Jordan would go, and we'd get a stateroom, and that was really something. Then we'd go up in the lobby, and everybody would be sitting there, and we'd all share our Toronto and sabji. It was really fun. It wasn't the kind of restaurants that you have on the ferry.
Yeah, of course. So how many people used to be on board, like, you know? Part of the...
There might be about 20 that would be going over, and people that could drive and get their families over. But it was a big celebration. So we all had people to stay, our relatives in Vancouver. And Vancouver was a hub. There was no Surrey. There was no Delta. It was there maybe as a city, but it wasn't where we went to. Vancouver, Abbotsford, Chilliwack were the places where my parents found. And Dad and grandfather got involved with the Abbotsford part. And Bosern, we used to call her Bosern Mahinder Court. So they grew up in that whole era. And so actually in 1954 she came over and raised the flag for the first time at the Punjabi Akali Gurdwara that then my grandfather and them founded. And she's in the pictures and raising the flag with grandfather. So we have a real strong connection with Abbotsford, where you guys are all from and based. But I think that then those journeys that we went to the Gurdwaras, that brought us all together as a family, right? And I'm always sharing this with Raj because he's never experienced it the way it was. But those kind of upbringing that we had, we were a large family. Victoria only had about 500 people as I grew up, right?
Okay.
And
500 like the total population or the...
Total. That's all. That's all. And some were Muslim, some were Hindu. Just a couple families you could again count it on your fingers. And we had a few. But we sort of lived, then we had our own homes, and some wanted to be near the Gurdwara that had been built on Topaz Avenue and Blackwood. And there was only the one Gurdwara here. And that's when the change came, and there was the Orthodox ones that wanted to keep the turban to be on the committees, and those were my grandfather and all that group and my dad. And so then we broke away, and the same thing happened in Punjabi, Akali Gurdwara over in Vancouver. So they started that one, and in 1954 they started the first one here. My sister was the first one to get married there in 1954, but April, just after Baisakhi, April 18th. And that's what those pictures are when Mahinder Kaur came over to Nishan Sabjasacharya Siya. So, and then the new Gurdwara was built for the Punjabi Akali Gurdwara. So now we've got a new one in the same space. That old one was actually a Christian church. And then my grandfather bought it for the community, and then the community paid him back, and he didn't want to take the money. So he wanted to donate it to us, because the whole cause was that they wanted to do it to be the Orthodox Sikhs to be looking after the management, and the other Gurdwara, they didn't have to cover their head. So that was one of the biggest things that happened in this community, to then the breakaway. But it's flourished, and as many things, and all our family have been married there. We've been married there in all those years. Yeah, 1954, everybody's been married there, except my brother was married in India, and they went to India in 1958 and got married there. And I think, and then now our grandchildren. So I just think that
full circle.
It's a complete circle, and it was wonderful when our granddaughter Danielle said that, you know, I want to get married with Mom and Dad, and Baba and Manji got married, and everybody else got married, and our grandfather. So when they did the ceremony this year, or last year, Raj's brother was the MC, and he shared that with the community, because people don't realize that come to the Gurdwara. What is the history of this Gurdwara?
Has the history of the Gurdwaras ever been recorded in a fashion that's more chronological, with names? And
No,
do you
only
think
myself.
that
I'm the only one. There's nobody that does it.
Okay.
We've done it for the Gurdwara up at Topaz, because that's where their beginnings were.
Yes.
And Dad started the first Punjabi school, as well as got the Gurdwaras out from India, pardon me, the Ghanis. And so we had that linkage when Dad started the first Punjabi school, because the young men that came from India didn't have Punjabi, because they're not from India. They came maybe when they're little, like 5, 6 years old, and then they didn't have Punjabi language. They were immersed into the, you know, the whole...
Buncy, how did you maintain such a good vocabulary in your Punjabi? Tell
Dad
us
taught
about
us. Dad taught us, and then we spoke Punjabi at home. Dad spoke very good English, and very well. And he'd done his schooling in India, so he was fine. And he did extra schooling here. And the thing is that he became a liaison in the community with grandfather was, and Dad took it on. And he just, whether it was immigration, whether it was police, whether it was anything, Gurdwaras and health issues, helping people travel. And in those days it wasn't a popular thing to travel either. The planes and everything were starting, and you know, and the transportation was different. But I think that my journey started with my dad and my grandfather's upbringing, and during high school I tried to share everything. As you asked a question before, what did I do as I was growing up?
Yeah, and how was it difficult for you, you know, being a person of Punjabi descent growing up in
It was
Victoria?
interesting. I didn't have that. I didn't have that. The harshest word was, "You're a Hindu." And it didn't bother me, because I just would say, I'm not, you know, and I didn't let it bother me. In high school, we didn't have that. I think that I knew that there was racism going around in the community. I got really involved in my schoolwork, got involved, you know, really involved in doing multicultural things. In that day, there wasn't even a word multicultural, it was ethnic. So I tried to share whatever we were trying to do. I got involved in politics, ran for prime minister. In grade 12, I had a whole campaign. My dad was already into politics. I started, and it just came. It was wonderful. So that was my beginning into politics, and it's been going on for the two of us right through to now, whether it's federal, provincial, municipal. It's been there, and that's how our family was blended with Raj.
How would you say the Victoria community has progressed in the last 100 years? Has it gone from a very close-knit, well integrated, to a more disparate, which is natural when numbers grow, etc.? How do you feel?
That's the thing that is sad.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because, yes, when we were here and young, it was a different community. You could come over, the ladies would come over and make comforters. They would make bardiyan, they would put them out in our backyard and on sheets. And those kind of things, that our house was open to everybody, my dad's. And then all these ladies became sisters to my mom. They were our aunties, right? And they weren't related. They were all just sisters to our grandmother and my mom. But that was a wonderful time, because we did everything together. And I think that kind of relationship we don't have anymore. You know, it's a complete different, detached community. We have our own circles, our family circles, and then our outside circles. But at one point, Raj and I realized that we needed to get out and do our our multicultural area of ethnicity and start getting going. But do you think people would get involved in the ethnic groups? No way. We couldn't even get them involved in the multicultural groups, the ethnocultural groups. I mean, so we took on some roles back in the 70s and 60s that, you know, starting with the Punjabi women's program and then going, and he used to teach children dance, Punjabi folk dance. It was the first time ever anybody's ever taught it. And so he taught 8 to 14-year-old children, and they performed at different, and we went up island, we went everywhere with them, and teaching them the Jana Gana Mana, the Indian anthem. Those things were things that then and it was interesting watching them going on the float. May 24th, we have an annual, they tried it, and all those students are dancing on there, and they're singing Jana Gana. And that's when you see that something that he did when he came from India in 1960, then our life then started to blossom in a different way, whether it was with the Y, interfaith. We belonged to all those organizations and tried to spread the Sikhism, tried to, all one family, BC Council were the family when we started, the founders. That was wonderful. Interfaith was wonderful because you were trying to share, and that isn't happening the way that in Victoria that it did. We brought together all the religions. The rabbi from the Jewish and the priest from the Catholic never got together here. We brought them together at the Christchurch large church. Those kind of things that you won't, every Mother's Day we had a big program. So for years, then it went to the BC Council for the Family, and that's where we were founders. And those things that religion and what happens in all the communities
so
in British Columbia.
Your drive for that comes from 3 generations of family who've always
2
supported.
before me, yes.
Yeah.
And it seemed, then as we got into, as our life changed and in a different way, the children came along. And as they grew up, we wanted to introduce them. We took them to India. And it was a wonderful 3 months for them to experience. Those kind of things we value for them to, then we started traveling with them as they grew up. And they went to university and did their work, and then they got married, and 5 grandchildren later, and now we're, I think that, but during that time we became so immersed into the Canadian multicultural communities, whether I was appointed nationally, you know, or I was appointed here, or I worked. We were all volunteers. It wasn't for money. There was no monetary. The biggest monetary
50
was
years
not,
of volunteer work.
It was all volunteer. And when I started my own business, just after Ross retired, we'd been very immersed into the Commonwealth Games, and I think that was a highlight. I mean, he's very sports-minded and been involved in a lot in India and here, but I think that part was a big highlight for our family because we were invited to be in the opening ceremony, and 20 years later, we carried the flag. We were just watching the flag bearers for the Olympic. We carried the flag 20 years later. It's 4 years ago. 1994 was the Commonwealth Games in Victoria, and they invited us to go back. And we still had our uniforms. So we were team attaches, right? Coming into that stadium, and we know what it feels like when there's 55,000 people.
Roaring.
The roar. And that was quite 4 years of us, being on the Board of Governors and team attaches, but bringing together the first Commonwealth Games multicultural not association, because we were a committee. We looked at all cultures of Canada, Italian, Polish, everybody, because they aren't part of the Commonwealth, but they are because they live in Canada, right? They don't get involved in the games. So they wore their ethnic dress in every flag. We looked after the flag bearers. Every function that we did prior to the games was multicultural. They came in with their ethnic dress, carried the flag of another country.
Would you say that's your greatest legacy for the community, is your ability?
It went on as a legacy. It went as a legacy. In 1993 we started the All One Family, and it was a large multicultural function as a legacy from the Commonwealth Games. So the opening of the Commonwealth Pool that started the flag bearers that we had organized, all 63 countries at that time. So that then went on and on and on. So 10 years, the volunteers put that large, every year the municipality supported us and gave us a venue, and we put the first multicultural events, and that was a wonderful legacy that from the Commonwealth Games. That was one legacy, but during that time, then I started my own business, and I knew that healthcare was somewhere that I really wanted to go. And that's when the cancer program started in the 90s, at the same time as the Commonwealth Games. So the cancer program took, it was awareness for the immigrant women throughout British Columbia to look at pap smearing and breast cancer, breast self-examination. I worked with the cancer societies and then did all those throughout British Columbia. Went on with the university, invited us to come in. And Raj had retired, so he came to, traveled with me all over. We traveled together. So that then, from what we found there, we went to India and looked at, did research on heart disease, because we knew that South Asians had the highest heart disease
per capita,
for Canada. And we went to India, did it complete with the cardiologist, and to this day we are still part of that. The doctors in India and the cardiologists, and they're here at our home. We still meet. But the thing is that led to the years of multicultural heart awareness programs, going into Gurdwaras, Muslims, mosques, going into Doukhobor communities, going into Chinese.
So what's your drive, Buncy? What drives you to be so prolific in your efforts to help the community?
I think to keep on going and to share what I can share to help people.
Where does that sharing's genesis?
Dad. I think Dad was the most inspiring to me because I was so close to him.
Tell us your dad's name so it gets in the record.
Yes, it's Mahinder Singh.
But
yeah. And we use Bidal. Bidal is the name because at one point, as you know, then Singh wasn't allowed. Like they wanted all the
last names.
And we had to then take on a name.
Yeah.
And some call some say Bedwell. Excuse me. Some say Bedwell, but ours was Bedall. Yeah. Pardon me. But I think that over the years. So
this is the poster.
Yes. Yeah. That was quite something, and I wish we'd been able to be here when your staff member Shanji she wrote. And we were already in California, and that's where we stayed for 3 months, as I said. But when she said that they wanted to honor with this poster, and it was quite unique, and could you guys do it? And that was a real highlight for us. We just wish we could be here. And I said to her, we can't get back in time for this event, and but if you could write to all our family, and I'll give you. I happen to have all the addresses. So she wrote to everybody that I gave the addresses in the family. And we tried to get everybody out. My sister it was snowing here that day, and she was the one that I wanted really to be there. But it's okay, my niece went, and our nephew went with his family and shared about Uncle in Nanaimo. But that is quite the thing. I mean, for him to be part of that whole process, and I know that there was a large group of men, and they were from all over British Columbia and the island. But Dad was part of this whole movement as well as my grandfather to try to help the people in British Columbia that were illegal immigrants as well. But so the two of them worked together. So that took place in 1939. This took place in 1947 when the partition happened. But his was the first federal election. This is the first federal election that came, and Dad was quite busy here and got involved with the different political parties, and he helped other people get involved too. And I just want to share something. Dad had never been recognized. Him and Grandfather worked like all the other Sikh gentlemen that were here. They worked hard, and when he'd done 50 years of community work, and the city of Victoria honored him. That was the first time ever an East Indian, of Indo-Canadian background I should say, was ever honored. And then that same year, Raj was honored for his work.
Honorary
citizens of Victoria. And then I was honored the same year. So 1985 was a very busy year for us. That's when Dad was honored all those years later. And that was quite something, the ceremony. So that's in Victoria. So the years, this is very
your
special.
Family has made Canadian history.
Yes. So Dad, if it hadn't been for our patriarch, my grandfather Batan Singh Tut and Vidal, it wouldn't have all happened. And then Dad took the role and took it. And then Grandfather, after 1939, all the things that he did, and he carried on right until 1954. He took a back seat, and Dad became chairman with the Gurdwaras, and committees, and then they worked with all
When
the
did
other.
your father pass away? What year?
Danny had just got married, our son just got married, and he passed away a year to the date, 1989, February 28th. And that was, he just loved the wedding. He was just shining, you know, and he just, he was just, it was great. And he loved Penny, our daughter-in-law, and so it was, when you have that blessing,
Yes.
and my parents gave it to us, and Roger's parents gave it to the boys as well. He didn't, that year when we did their engagement, the year before, then Dad passed away the following year. He didn't get to see our second son get married. They both got married the same year, our two sons. So they've all been married 29 years.
Anything else you want
Yeah.
to highlight about any story you want to tell us about your growing up? Anything that you think that the viewers would enjoy?
Growing up in teenage or growing up as...
Anytime.
I think that my first exposure to try to do something like my dad had done was with my girlfriend, Punjabi, a girl, and we started the first school in the Gurdwara for the women and their daughter-in-laws that had come to Canada. This is back in the late 50s. And so we started, and that there was no such thing as ESL.
No.
So we called it survival English. So we taught them how to write. They didn't know how to write their names or print their names or catch a bus or anything. Their English was nil. So we set up a school. We funded it ourselves, the two of us, and we set up in the Punjabi Akali Gurdwara downstairs. They put a blackboard up for us. They did everything. And it was wonderful. So we taught them their first survival English. And then many, many years later, then Raj and I and my sister started, was part and taught Punjabi and the religion and the culture. So then that was fabulous. I think, and that's where Danielle came into the picture. She was already a student with the Gyani, that one of the teachers, and so she was learning at 5, and then by the time we got there, she was 8, and then we did 1 year with her, and she was 8. So she's between 5 and 8, and then the other one came, and he was only 5, Brandon, our second grandson, and so we tried to involve them into the Gurdwara. So they've always been involved like other children, and more so it seemed to have stuck with some of them more so than others,
Yes.
but I think that's their family, their dad and mom. Actually, Penny, our daughter-in-law, she took on a lot of roles as volunteer, and the biggest role was Girl Guides, and and she became the commissioner. But she actually went out and talked about the Sikh weddings. She talked about the traditions in all the Girl Guides. And then she took the group to Australia with the Girl Guides there. And so those kind of things that then they blended with them, with their community, and these girls shared what they had here. But her love for what she's grown up in with our son and our family has been horrendous. She's just, like we know that she goes out there and she'll talk about the wedding, and every year she shows, for many, many years, January 28th, out came the video of the Gurdwara wedding and the reception. So their children, which are our grandchildren, grew up with that same video, and now it's too long.
Every year.
Every year,
They
it's
sit
a
around
tradition.
and they watch it.
Very nice.
It's like the night before Christmas, right? Danny reads, there were little babies, and he used to read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and he does that. They're 27 years old. And those traditions, whether it's Caucasian, Christian, or Sikh,
They're
are all
important.
still. And we all sit around and listen to them. They got their pajamas on that their mom has made, and everybody's sitting. Now they're 27 years old, the grandchildren. But these traditions, whether it be Christian, whatever religion you are, whatever values you have, if you keep them, that's the important part.
Absolutely.
Even if you kept a little bit.
Well, you have a whole legacy. You've kept a whole lot. Thank
The
you.
legacy of I think this is this one page I think is beautiful to see, to have their first celebration of the marriage, to be there, to be blessed at the Gurdwara where we all got married. I think that was and you know what, just about 4 months before the wedding, she asked her Baba and her other Nana, would they bring her into the Gurdwara? Not her dad. Now, these guys didn't know that was going to happen. It was quite a beautiful, what a beautiful thing for them. And, her other grandfather is 80, 85 years old. And the two of them brought her in, and it brought tears to our eyes because we'd never seen that happen before, you know. And I think those kind of things that she values,
Yes.
and her husband, are beautiful because they have all that.
That's your legacy.
You know, all of us are still wearing it. So really, everybody, she made sure that everybody got it from the first day of the wedding planning of that week of her whole wedding to have for the Gurdwara and for the ceremony, and we're all still, most of us are all still wearing them. And I think that those values that are still there are carrying on, and I hope that, I mean, we see our sons volunteer work, we see our girls, or all the volunteer work
So I think
everybody's doing.
that's what defines.
Yeah.
Thank you, Buncy.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being
Thank
a part
you.
of this project and sharing your personal and family
It's a
history with us.
pleasure. I would do it any time because I think it's very important to carry on. Let the young
No,
generation.
just off the camera, you talking about